A fair bicyclist, Ishbel Holmes, has competed for Iran and passing recital about the planet, but her previous lifetime was hard and trauma. Deserted out by her mom at 16, she found by herself homelessness and tortured by suicide thoughts. While she was done to keep a homelessness block 5 years after, she implemented she had to do a changing. She begun biking and set off circle the planet, guideline to and face in a homeless dog how was to convert her lifetime ever. One of my experiences of creature on a bicycle was in Manchester, while my dad utilized to loop through the town to get a 20-kilogram bag of potatoes how was a few cheap more profitable. I was yet in nappies, and I utilized to sit in a slight chair near his seat in the potatoes over me. My dad was student down there while he met and bring down in loving in my mother. It was the period of the Iran coup, and Iran abruptly stopped payments to across the sea students, to try to promote its citizens behind. Fair love how his cash dry up, and the bike rapidly became an essential instrument for surviving. While I was 2 year ancient, we excited to Scotland so how my dad could discover job. But the wedding didn't job out and they separate. One period while I was newcomer daddy, and familiarity of his requested me to sit on his knee joint, and ran his brush up my foot. I must include been about 7 year ancient. Following how I fair recall sense very poor. I thick felt love I was the terrible, horrible lady. I believe how was while I very begun loathing by myself. My dad attended one more than period following how and later he disappeared. I mind it was my error how he leftward. As my 2 brothers and I grew older, my mum more struggled to manage. She began to accuse all of the household's problems on me. Things among us were pathetic and strained, and I withdrew though more than. As my 16 date of birth close, I was deep concerned, knowledge the day was while my mum would no much longer be accountable for me. As I afraid, soon following my date of birth she chucked me out for nice. While she closed the front line doorway, how was one of the tough moments of my lifetime. How time of permanent on the stairs downward to the way, and possessing no selection but to go off. It was love's sluggish motion. I fair slow walked and stored walk ultimately they found me a encourage household but all I requested was to go household. I prayed to each God I had always heard of for my household to get me behind. One day I was walk behind of my Saturday job and a car stopped, needing directions to the pond. It was a team of men. They requested if I could show them the path, proverb they would give me behind. I got in the car but they didn't give me direct behind. They took me off and abused me. I didn't speak nobody since I mind it was my error. I believed it was me creature punished for creature poor. I dealt in it by block it of. By how period I was utilized to human beings making everything they requested in me. I didn't include any personality worth. I didn't eat correctly. I despised by myself so lot I requested to dead. The men came behind for me and I rejected to get in the vehicle. I ran off. I was so frantic I went to a telephone box and named my mother. I was I was weeping, proverb I would do everything she requested. I can be the lady you wish to constitute, I told. Poor things are event. I said her which had happened. All she told was how it was my error and I necessary to changing. Following how all I requested to do was dead. At one spot I was inviting a suicidal preventive link each 20 protocol. At 21, I was deserted out of a homelessness block. The key employee shouted at me, proverb I would ever be in the sewer. Down there was thing on her, while she told how done me believe, I can't enable the. I knew I had to do a judgment. I had to perpetrate by myself to residing and not be consumption by thoughts of die. Collecting by myself up was one of the tough things I had to do. I didn't fair abruptly rotate in Superwoman, I crawled out of wherever I was. I registered in school. I purchased a other-hand bicycle since it was more rapid and more profitable rather than the coach. I began biking in a regional bicycle clubhouse. I was the just woman, and I was biking by myself at the behind to begin in. Slow I began to hold up. I favorite biking quick since it was a large flea, but as well my lifetime got superior. I was biking so lot how down there must include been so lot endorphins shooting off at all times. I as well had my at first feeling of identity everywhere. While they constructed the velodrome biking scene in Glasgow for the 2014 State Games, I went on for a laughter. Down there and later I got proposed a location for a competition sprinting crew in Glasgow. At my at first big contest, I sped history the early State Games medalist of Scotland to win It was at how spot I had the prospect to go to Iran. Looking behind, it wasn't the order period for me, but down there was a drag since I had household down there. In Tehran, they requested how I testing for the Iran crew, and proposed me a location on their crew. I mind, the is my opportunity to communicate in the nation, and my dad. So I chose to racing for Iran quite rather than stay to put in a skill period for the State Games in Scotland. I had never been implicated in females' rights up, but in Iran it was excess. I begun to say out versus the way the female riders were creature purified. We had to boat train tiring hijabs that in the stifling warmth was terrible. Female had their portable phones undertaken off them, the female, not the men. I was said the was so the girls were not stray and exchanging messages boys. I tell up versus the discrimination and intimidation, but anything modified. Ultimately I leftward. I flew of Tehran to Turkey, wherever by opportunity I met a man who had been tourism on his bicycle for months. I knew in how instantaneous how was which I was departure to do. I got a flying behind to Scotland, sold out the slight stuff I had and set away. Later I trapped a flying to Pleasant, in France, and began biking the planet. Conclusion Lucy it was in Turkey, on the Sea of Marble, how I met Lucy. I saw the lighting colored dog packing on by my behind tire. I spurred on the pedals and tested to loop off, but she gave pursuit. I wasn't planner to halt. I was biking the planet, which was I departure to do in a road hound. She tested to hold up, her form distorted in the range. Following I time, I mind, the is fair incorrect, Ishbel. So I stretched the brakes. She ultimately trapped up in me, falling down to the land a meter or so off. I detained out my brush but she stored her range. I went to discover a campsite place neighboring and she accompanied me. The next day I was planner to get her behind to her countryside, but she was attacked by a mob of dogs. Vision those 4 persons dogs, the reality how it was a team of them, and how she answered, transportable me behind to while I was 16. She didn't try to run off. She didn't try to struggle behind. I had been fair love how, enabling human beings to wound me. All became a stain. I threw downward my bike and I was shouting, and loaded in a force how I didn't aware. Once I fought them away. I took a few stairs behind and I fair began weeping, for Lucy but very for by myself. I'd lived my lifetime block out all and down there was the time of implementation on which had happened. I done it my mission statement to get her to security, since I knew which lifetime was love out of security. How portion of the travel thing modified, the force, and the personality worth, came in the hound. I fair became various. I wasn't a sacrifice over. I stored thought, how could I defend the dog so lot while I had unsuccessful to defend by myself. I knew I had to begin fond by myself, and I didn't aware how, but I copy the way I looked following Lucy. Manufacturing certainly she was secure, she was secured, she ate nice meal. And ultimately it fair became kind of machine for me to be love how. Lucy was the at first period I'd always skilled absolute loving. It was transformative. My entire perceptual had been so deformed by all I was led to trust on by myself. It was love I had fair roused up. I was stunned. I recall in Lucy external my camping meeting in unbelief how had been my lifetime. It was just later I mind, strike Ishbel, which you've reached, in fact is unbelievable. Up how time I'd never been proud of by myself. I pledged Lucy I would assist all the some Luces in the planet, all her friends. One dog, one road dog, modified my lifetime. It's nearly love she did thing how no humane did. She saved me. As said to Olivia Lang figure by Katie Horwich. Ishbel's volume, Me, My Bicycle, and a Road Dog Named Lucy, is published in the UK by Brat Journey. She blogs at and